Lisa Martinez stared at the assignment papers in her hands and felt her heart sink. After 12 years of frontline service fighting alien raiders and protecting human colonies, Command was sending her to Outpost Delta 7. The official description called it a monitoring station on the outer rim, but everyone knew what it really meant. They were putting her out to pasture. The transport ship shuddered as it dropped out of hyperspace near the Kepler 442 system. Through the viewport, Lisa could see the gas giant Titan Prime spinning slowly in the darkness. Somewhere in orbit around that massive planet was her new home, a forgotten outpost on a barren moon that nobody cared about anymore. Captain Rogers, the transport commander, walked over to where Lisa sat reviewing her orders. He was an older man with kind eyes who had seen too many good officers get shuffled off to nowhere assignments. "I heard about what happened at New Geneva," he said quietly. "That wasn't your fault, Commander." Lisa looked up from her papers. The battle at New Geneva had been a disaster, but not because of anything she had done wrong. Political infighting between two admirals had left her fleet without proper support, and 3,000 colonists had died because of it. Someone had to take the blame, and it was easier to blame a mid-level commander than to admit the brass had screwed up. "Orders are orders," Lisa replied, folding the papers and putting them in her jacket pocket. "Maybe a quiet posting is what I need right now." The transport's intercom crackled to life. "Commander Martinez to the bridge. We're approaching. Outpost Delta 7. Lisa made her way through the narrow corridors of the transport ship. The bridge was small and cramped, with barely enough room for the crew to operate the controls. Through the main screen, she could see a small gray moon growing larger as they approached. On the surface, she could make out the dim lights of the outpost, a cluster of buildings that looked even smaller than she had expected. "There she is," Captain Rogers said, pointing at the screen. "Home sweet home." The outpost looked like it had been built 30 years ago and forgotten about 25 years ago. The main buildings were standard military construction, designed for function rather than comfort. Solar collectors and communication arrays dotted the surface around the central complex. It was the kind of place where careers went to die. The transport landed on a small pad next to the main building. Lisa gathered her gear and prepared to meet her new crew. According to her briefing, there were only 3 other people stationed at Delta 7. For someone used to commanding hundreds of personnel, it would be quite an adjustment. The airlock cycled open and Lisa stepped onto the surface of the moon. The gravity was about 80% of Earth normal, light enough to make walking feel strange, but not so light as to be dangerous. The air was thin but breathable, recycled through atmospheric processors that had seen better days. A man in his 40s approached across the landing pad. He wore sergeant's stripes and had the weathered look of someone who had been fixing things for a very long time. "Commander Martinez? I'm Sergeant Jake Collins, base engineer. Welcome to Delta 7. Jake's handshake was firm, and his eyes were sharp despite the tired look on his face. Lisa could tell immediately that he was the kind of soldier who kept things running, no matter what the circumstances. Behind him stood a young woman in corporal's stripes and a private who looked like he would rather be anywhere else in the galaxy. "This is Corporal Amy Turner, our communications specialist," Jake said, gesturing to the woman. She was probably in her early 20s with bright eyes and an eager expression. "And Private Kevin Wright handles maintenance and general duties." Kevin Wright nodded without much enthusiasm. He was thin and pale, with the look of someone who spent most of his time indoors reading or playing games. Lisa wondered what he had done to get assigned to such a remote posting. "What's the status of the outpost?" Lisa asked as they walked toward the main building. Jake's expression grew grim. "Not good, Commander. The previous CO, Captain Hayes, left about 2 months ago. He didn't exactly leave detailed records about the state of things around here. We've been basically keeping the lights on and not much else." They entered the main building through a heavy airlock door. The interior was dimly lit and had the stale smell of recycled air that had been recycled too many times. The corridors were narrow and utilitarian, with exposed pipes and cables running along the walls. It was clear that maintenance had been deferred for quite some time. "This is the command center," Amy said, leading them into a room filled with outdated computer terminals and displays. Most of the screens were dark, and the ones that were working showed basic system monitoring information. "We've got communications with the nearest fleet base, but it's about 6 hours away by fast courier." Lisa looked around the command center and felt a growing sense of dismay. The equipment was at least 15 years old, maybe older. Half the displays weren't working, and the ones that were showed systems running at minimal capacity. This wasn't just a quiet posting, it was a forgotten one. "What about defensive systems?" she asked. Kevin Wright spoke up for the first time. "We've got 2 plasma cannons that might work if you don't mind them overheating after 3 shots. The missile systems have been offline for about 5 years, and nobody's bothered to fix them. The sensors can detect ships in the system, but that's about it." Jake nodded grimly. "The truth is, Commander, this place has been running on autopilot for years. Command sends us supplies every 6 months and otherwise pretends we don't exist. We monitor space traffic and file reports that nobody reads." Lisa walked over to one of the working displays and studied the information it showed. Power levels were low but stable. Life support was functioning, but several backup systems were offline. The Outpost's main reactor was running at about 60% capacity, which explained why half the lights were dim. "Show me the rest of the facility," she said. They spent the next 2 hours touring Delta 7. The living quarters were cramped but clean. The mess hall could seat maybe 20 people, though it had only been used by the skeleton crew for months. The workshop was well equipped, but cluttered with broken equipment that nobody had bothered to repair. The storage areas were mostly empty, with supplies running low on everything from spare parts to decent food. The most interesting discovery was in the basement levels. Jake led them down a narrow stairway to a series of rooms that had been sealed off. "These were part of the original construction," he explained, unsealing one of the doors. "The base was supposed to be much bigger than it ended up being. Budget cuts, you know how it goes." The sealed rooms were larger than anything on the upper levels. Lisa could see connection points for power systems that had never been installed, and mounting brackets for equipment that had never arrived. There were spaces that looked like they had been designed for weapon systems and defensive equipment. "How much of this original design was actually built?" Lisa asked. Jake scratched his head thoughtfully. "Hard to say. The plans are probably in the computer somewhere, but the files are a mess. Captain Hayes wasn't big on organization. I'd guess maybe 30% of what was originally planned actually got constructed." As they returned to the upper levels, Lisa's mind was working. The outpost might look like a forgotten backwater, but there were possibilities here that nobody had explored. With the right approach and enough determination, Delta 7 could become something more than just a place where careers went to die. That evening, as her small crew settled into their routines, Lisa sat in her new quarters and studied the assignment papers again. Command might think they were putting her somewhere she couldn't cause any more trouble, but they might have miscalculated. Sometimes the most important battles were fought in places nobody expected. Lisa Martinez had been at Delta 7 for 3 weeks, and every day brought new surprises about just how badly the outpost had been neglected. She spent her mornings reviewing old maintenance logs and her afternoons exploring the facility with Jake Collins, learning about systems that barely functioned and equipment that had been jury-rigged to keep working long past its intended lifespan. The breakthrough came on a Tuesday morning when Amy Turner made an unexpected discovery in the computer archives. She had been trying to organize the mess of files left by the previous commander when she stumbled across something that made her call for Lisa immediately. "Commander, you need to see this," Amy said, her voice excited as Lisa entered the communications room. "I found the original construction blueprints for Delta 7. You're not going to believe what this place was supposed to be." The holographic display showed a three-dimensional model of the outpost that bore little resemblance to the small facility they currently occupied. The original design called for a massive defensive installation with multiple levels, heavy weapons, emplacements, and defensive systems that would have made it one of the strongest fortifications in human space. "This is incredible," Lisa said, studying the display. "Why wasn't any of this built?" Amy scrolled through the project files. Budget cuts hit about halfway through construction. The military decided they needed the resources for offensive operations. Instead of defensive installations, they scaled back the project to just basic monitoring equipment and a skeleton crew. Jake Collins joined them in the communications room and whistled low when he saw the holographic display. "I knew there was more to this place than met the eye. Look at these power conduits and structural supports. Most of the basic infrastructure is already in place. It's just been deactivated." Lisa felt her pulse quicken as she studied the blueprints. The outpost they currently occupied was built on top of a foundation designed for something much larger and more powerful. The sealed rooms in the basement levels suddenly made sense. They weren't just empty storage areas, they were partially completed defensive installations waiting for someone to finish the job. "How much of this infrastructure is still functional?" she asked Jake. The sergeant scratched his beard thoughtfully. "Hard to say without doing a complete survey, but I'd guess most of the basic systems are there. Power distribution, structural support, even some of the defensive hardpoints. It would take work to activate everything, but it's possible." Over the next several days, Lisa organized a systematic exploration of the outpost's hidden potential. Jake Collins proved invaluable in this effort, using his engineering expertise to trace power systems and identify equipment that could be reactivated. Amy Turner worked to decrypt old computer files and locate technical manuals that had been archived and forgotten. Even Kevin Wright began to show enthusiasm for the project. His knowledge of maintenance procedures and basic electronics proved useful in assessing the condition of abandoned systems. For the first time since Lisa's arrival, the young private seemed genuinely interested in something other than his comic books and video games. The discoveries were remarkable. Deep beneath the outpost's main levels, they found spaces designed for automated defensive systems. Power conduits ran throughout the facility, ready to supply energy to weapons that had never been installed. Structural reinforcements showed that the outpost had been designed to withstand direct bombardment from capital ships. "Look at this," Jake said, pointing to a series of mounting points on the outer walls. "These were designed for automated turret systems. The power feeds are all in place, and the targeting computers are built into the main network. Someone just needs to install the actual weapons." Lisa began to see possibilities that nobody at command had imagined. With enough resources and determination, Delta 7 could become exactly what it had originally been designed to be, a fortress capable of defending this entire sector of space. The question was whether she could make it happen with her limited crew and resources. The first test came when Lisa decided to reactivate one of the abandoned defensive systems. Working together, her team managed to bring online a sensor array that had been dormant for over a decade. The improvement in their detection capabilities was immediate and dramatic. "We're picking up ship movements 3 systems away," Amy reported, excitedly. "The old sensors could barely detect anything beyond the orbit of the gas giant. This is incredible." With the improved sensors came an unexpected discovery. The space around Delta 7 wasn't as empty as everyone had assumed. Long-range scans revealed signs of activity in nearby systems, energy signatures that didn't match any known human technology. Something was moving in the darkness beyond the rim of human space, and it didn't seem friendly. Lisa studied the sensor readings with growing concern. The energy patterns were consistent with the alien confederation known as the Hegemony, a hostile group that had been systematically attacking human outposts along the frontier. If they were operating in this sector, it meant that Delta 7 might not remain a quiet backwater posting for much longer. "How confident are you about these readings?" she asked Amy. The young communications specialist checked her instruments carefully. "Very confident, Commander. These aren't random signals or background radiation. Something big is moving out there, and it's heading in our general direction. Lisa made a decision that would change everything. Instead of reporting the threat to command and requesting evacuation, she decided to turn Delta 7 into the fortress it had originally been designed to be. If trouble was coming to their sector, they would be ready for it. Jake, I need you to assess exactly what it would take to reactivate the defensive systems, she said. All of them. I want to know what we need in terms of equipment, materials, and time. Jake's eyes widened as he realized what she was suggesting. Commander, that's a massive undertaking. We're talking about installing weapons systems, defensive, shields, automated turrets. It would be like building a new base from scratch. But it's possible? Lisa pressed. The sergeant nodded slowly. It's possible. Most of the infrastructure is there. We'd need to requisition a lot of equipment and supplies, but Command has emergency protocols for defensive installations. If you can justify the threat level, you can get almost anything you need. Amy looked up from her sensor displays. Commander, I'm tracking at least 6 separate energy signatures in the adjacent systems. Whatever's out there, it's not just a single ship or small patrol. This could be a major threat. Lisa felt the familiar rush of adrenaline that came with impending combat. For the first time since her assignment to Delta 7, she felt like she had a real mission, something that mattered beyond filing routine reports and maintaining equipment. The outpost that Command had intended as a dead-end assignment was about to become the front line of humanity's defense. All right, people, she said, looking at her small crew. We have work to do. Jake, start making lists of everything we need to turn this place into a proper defensive installation. Amy, I want continuous monitoring of those energy signatures. Let me know immediately if anything changes. Kevin, you're going to learn more about defensive systems than you ever wanted to know. For the first time since arriving at Delta 7, Kevin Wright smiled. Yes, Commander. This beats routine maintenance by a long shot. As her crew began their preparations, Lisa stood in the command center and studied the holographic display of the original Outpost design. Command had sent her here to end her career quietly, but they had unknowingly given her the tools to build something extraordinary. Delta 7 was about to become much more than anyone had ever imagined possible. Lisa Martinez stood in the command center of Delta 7, watching the latest sensor readings with growing alarm. The alien energy signatures that Amy had detected 3 weeks ago were getting stronger and closer. Intelligence reports from other rim outposts painted a grim picture. The hegemony was conducting a systematic advance toward human space, destroying everything in their path. Commander, we're getting reports from Outpost Beta 12, Amy said, her voice tense. They went dark 6 hours ago. Last transmission indicated they were under attack by unknown alien vessels. Beta 12 was only 2 systems away from Delta 7. At the rate the hegemony was advancing, they would reach the Kepler 442 system within days, not weeks. Lisa had to make a decision that would determine not only the fate of her crew, but potentially the entire sector. Jake, how long would it take to get the basic defensive systems online? She asked. The sergeant looked up from the equipment manifests. He had been preparing. With the supplies we've already requisitioned, maybe 2 weeks for the automated turrets and basic shields. Another week for the missile systems if we push hard. But Commander, that's assuming we can get the equipment delivered in time. Lisa had been using emergency authorization codes to requisition equipment and supplies, claiming defensive necessity without revealing the full scope of her plans. Supply ships had been arriving regularly, carrying everything from plasma cannons to sophisticated targeting computers. Her crew had been working around the clock to install and integrate the new systems. What about the underground bunkers? She asked. Those are almost ready, Kevin Wright reported. The young private had proven surprisingly capable when given real responsibility. The power systems are online, life support is installed, and we've got the command centers wired for full defensive operations. Jake's right about the timeline for the weapons, though. 2 weeks minimum. Lisa looked at the tactical display showing alien fleet movements. 2 weeks might be too long. The hegemony advance was accelerating, and Delta 7 lay directly in their path. She made a decision that would have seemed impossible a month ago. "We're going to do it in 1 week," she announced. "I'm declaring a military emergency and implementing round-the-clock operations. Amy, send a priority message to Fleet Command informing them of the threat and our defensive preparations. Jake, I want every available system online and functional within 7 days." The transformation of Delta 7 over the next week was nothing short of miraculous. Working in shifts around the clock, Lisa's small crew managed to activate systems that had been dormant for over a decade. The automated turret systems came online first, their targeting computers integrated with the improved sensor arrays. Defensive shields followed, creating overlapping protective fields around the key structures. Jake Collins proved to be a genius at improvisation. When standard mounting systems for the plasma cannons didn't fit the older infrastructure, he designed new brackets using the Outpost's fabrication equipment. When power distribution problems threatened to delay the missile systems, he rerouted circuits through pathways that hadn't been used since the original construction. Amy Turner's communications expertise became crucial as more supply ships arrived. With critical equipment, she coordinated delivery schedules, managed inventory, and maintained contact with Fleet Command as reports of the hegemony advance continued to worsen. Her ability to multitask became essential as the pace of work intensified. Even Kevin Wright rose to the occasion. His knowledge of basic electronics and maintenance procedures proved invaluable when installing complex defensive systems. He worked alongside Jake to wire targeting computers, calibrate sensor arrays, and test automated systems. For the first time since joining the military, he seemed to have found something he was genuinely good at. By the 4th day, Delta 7 was beginning to look like the fortress it had been designed to be. Automated turrets tracked across the sky, their sensors constantly scanning for threats. Shield generators hummed with power, ready to deflect incoming fire. Underground bunkers provided protected command centers and living spaces that could withstand orbital bombardment. The most impressive transformation was in the underground levels. What had been empty storage areas were now sophisticated command centers filled with tactical displays and defensive control systems. Jake had managed to install enough automation that Lisa's small crew could effectively control dozens of weapons, systems, and defensive measures. "This is incredible," Amy said as she tested the communication systems from the main bunker. "We've got secure links to every defensive system, backup power for everything, and enough supplies to last for months, if necessary." Lisa stood in the central command bunker, surrounded by displays showing the status of systems she hadn't even known existed a month ago. The outpost that Command had written off as a forgotten backwater was now one of the most heavily defended installations in this sector of space. The question was whether it would be enough. On the 6th day, long-range sensors detected the leading edge of the hegemony fleet entering the outer system. The alien ships were still days away from the moon where Delta 7 was located, but their presence confirmed Lisa's worst fears. The attack was coming, and it was coming soon. "How many ships are we looking at?" Lisa asked Amy, who was monitoring the sensor displays. "At least 20 contacts, possibly more. They're maintaining formation and moving at a steady pace toward the inner system. Based on their current speed, they'll reach our position in approximately 48 hours. Lisa felt the familiar calm that came before battle. All the preparation, all the frantic work, all the desperate improvisation had led to this moment. Delta 7 would face its first real test, and she would discover whether her transformation of the outpost had been brilliant foresight or futile gesture. "Jake, final status on all defensive systems," she ordered. "All automated turrets are online and fully operational. Missile systems are loaded and ready. Shield generators are at full power. Underground command centers are secure and operational. We've got overlapping fields of fire covering all approach vectors, and the automated systems can operate independently if necessary." Kevin Wright looked up from his console. "Commander, the alien ships, they're not trying to hide their approach. They're broadcasting on all frequencies, demanding surrender from any human installations in the system. They seem to think this is going to be easy. Lisa smiled grimly. The hegemony had been destroying lightly defended outposts and research stations, places with minimal defensive capabilities and small crews. They expected to find another helpless target at Delta 7, not a fully armed fortress with sophisticated defensive systems. "Let them come," she said. "They're about to discover that humans don't surrender easily, and that some places are worth fighting for." As the alien fleet continued its approach, Lisa made final preparations for the battle ahead. Her crew took their positions in the protected command bunkers. Automated systems ran final diagnostics on weapons and shields. Supply rooms were stocked with everything needed for an extended siege. Delta 7 was as ready as it could be. The transformation was complete. What had begun as a forgotten monitoring station on the rim of human space was now a fortress capable of defending an entire sector. Lisa Martinez, the officer that command had tried to quietly push aside, was about to prove that sometimes the most important battles were fought by the people that nobody expected to fight them. In less than 2 days, the galaxy would learn that humanity's capacity for turning disadvantage into advantage was limited only by imagination and determination. The hegemony was about to receive a very unpleasant surprise. The hegemony fleet arrived at the edge of the Kepler 442 system exactly when Lisa Martinez had predicted. 23 alien vessels of various sizes dropped out of hyperspace and began a methodical advance toward the inner system. Their formation was confident and unhurried. They expected to find another defenseless human outpost waiting for destruction. Lisa watched from the underground command center as long-range sensors tracked the approaching fleet. The aliens were taking their time, probably scanning for defensive installations and evaluating the threat level. They would find Delta 7 eventually, but Lisa intended to control exactly when and how that happened. "Jake, status on all defensive." "Systems," she ordered. "All turrets online and tracking. Missile systems loaded and ready. Shield generators at full power. Automated systems are running final diagnostics." Jake's voice was steady despite the tension everyone felt. "Commander, we're as ready as we're ever going to be." Amy Turner looked up from her communications console. "I'm picking up alien transmissions. They're demanding surrender from any human installations in the system. Standard hegemony protocol. Submit or be destroyed." Lisa studied the tactical display showing alien ship positions. The hegemony fleet was advancing in a standard search pattern, systematically checking each planet and moon for signs of human presence. It would take them several hours to reach Delta 7's position, which gave her time to implement the first phase of her defensive plan. "Kevin, activate the passive sensor network," she ordered. "I want to know everything about those ships before they get within firing range." The passive sensors were one of Jake's most clever installations, hidden throughout the system on asteroids and abandoned mining platforms. They could gather detailed information about enemy vessels without revealing their own positions. Within minutes, data began flowing back to the command center. "Interesting," Amy said, analyzing the incoming information. "These aren't just warships. I'm seeing troop transports, supply vessels, and what looks like construction equipment. This isn't a raid. They're planning to establish a permanent presence in the system." Lisa felt a cold anger building as she realized the full scope of the hegemony's intentions. They weren't just destroying human outposts. They were preparing to colonize human space. The systematic advance through the rim sectors was the beginning of a full-scale invasion. "That changes everything," she said grimly. "This isn't just about defending Delta 7 anymore. If we can stop them here, we might be able to slow down their entire advance." The first contact came 12 hours later when a hegemony scout ship detected Delta 7's energy signature. The alien vessel approached cautiously, its sensors scanning the moon's surface for signs of defensive installations. From their perspective, they were looking at a small monitoring station with minimal defenses, exactly what they expected to find. Lisa watched the scout ship's approach on the tactical display. The alien vessel was maintaining a safe distance, probably preparing to call in the main fleet once they confirmed the outpost was an easy target. She decided to let them maintain that illusion for a little while longer. "Hold fire until I give the order," she commanded. "Let them think we're just another defenseless target." The scout ship completed its initial scan and began transmitting data back to the main fleet. Lisa could imagine the report. Small human installation, minimal defenses, estimated crew of less than 10. The kind of target the hegemony had been, destroying with ease throughout their advance. 20 minutes later, the main alien fleet began moving toward Delta 7's position. They approached in attack formation but without urgency, confident that they were facing another routine target. Lisa counted 18 warships plus the support vessels, more than enough firepower to destroy a normal outpost several times over. "Commander, they're powering up weapons," Amy reported. "Multiple energy signatures indicate they're preparing to fire." Lisa waited until the alien fleet was within optimal range of Delta 7's defensive systems. The hegemony ships were arranged in a standard attack formation, assuming they would face minimal resistance. They had no idea what was waiting for them. "Now," Lisa ordered. The transformation of Delta 7 from apparently defenseless outpost to formidable fortress happened in seconds. Automated turrets emerged from hidden positions and immediately began tracking targets. Shield generators activated, creating overlapping protective fields around the key installations. Missile systems came online and locked onto the closest alien vessels. The first salvo from Delta 7's defensive systems caught the hegemony fleet completely by surprise. Plasma bolts from 12 automated turrets struck 3 alien warships simultaneously, overwhelming their shields and causing massive damage. 2 ships exploded immediately, while the third began spinning out of control, its engines damaged beyond repair. "Direct hits on multiple targets," Jake reported with satisfaction. "Enemy fleet is breaking formation and attempting to withdraw to safer range." The hegemony commander, whoever he was, recovered quickly from the initial shock. The alien fleet regrouped at longer range and began a more systematic attack on the outpost. Their return fire was heavy and sustained, testing the limits of Delta 7's defensive shields. Lisa watched the tactical display as the battle developed. The aliens had superior numbers and firepower, but Delta 7's position and defensive systems gave her crew significant advantages. The automated turrets could fire continuously without fatigue, and the overlapping shield generators provided protection that would be difficult to overwhelm. "Amy, jam their communications," Lisa ordered. "I don't want them calling for reinforcements." The communications jamming was another of Jake's innovations. Using the outpost's powerful transmitters, they could disrupt alien communications across a wide area. The hegemony fleet found itself cut off from outside support, unable to call for additional ships or report their unexpected difficulties. The battle settled into a pattern of attack and counterattack. The alien fleet would advance, probe the defenses, and retreat when the automated systems inflicted too much damage. Lisa used this time to study their tactics and identify weaknesses in their formation. "They're not used to facing prepared defenses," she observed. "Their whole strategy is built around overwhelming weak targets quickly. They don't know how to handle a real fight." Jake nodded from his position at the defensive control station. "Their formation is designed for intimidation, not tactical efficiency. If we can break their coordination, they'll start making mistakes." The opportunity came when 3 hegemony warships attempted a coordinated attack on the outpost's main shield generator. Lisa had been waiting for exactly this kind of mistake. She activated a defensive subroutine that Jake had programmed into the automated systems, the kill zone protocol. The 3 attacking ships found themselves channeled into a narrow area, where the concentrated fire from multiple turret systems could focus on them simultaneously. The automated targeting computers locked onto all 3 vessels and opened fire with devastating precision. Within 30 seconds, all 3 ships were destroyed. The destruction of 3 warships in such a short time had a profound effect on the hegemony fleet. The remaining ships pulled back to maximum range, clearly shaken by the effectiveness of the outpost's defenses. Lisa could see confusion in their formations as commanders tried to understand how a small human installation could be so heavily defended. "Kevin, launch the harassment drones," Lisa ordered. The harassment drones were Kevin Wright's contribution to the defensive system. Small, fast, and difficult to track, they could dart in and out of the alien formation, attacking vulnerable targets and disrupting their coordination. The young private had programmed them with unpredictable flight patterns that made them nearly impossible to shoot down. As the drones swarmed around the alien fleet, causing damage and confusion, Lisa prepared for the next phase of the battle. The hegemony fleet was learning that Delta 7 was not the easy target they had expected. The question was whether they would retreat or commit to a prolonged assault. The answer came when the largest alien vessel, obviously the fleet flagship, began moving toward the outpost at maximum speed. The hegemony commander had decided to end the battle with a direct assault, gambling that overwhelming force could break through the defenses. Lisa smiled grimly as she watched the flagship's approach. She had been saving the best defensive system for last, the one that would turn Delta 7 from a tough target into an impregnable fortress. The hegemony was about to learn why humans were so dangerous when they had time to prepare. The hegemony flagship charged toward Delta 7 with desperate fury, its weapons blazing as it tried to break through the outpost's defenses. Lisa Martinez watched from the command center as the massive alien vessel absorbed hit after hit from the automated turrets, its shields flaring with each impact, but somehow holding together. "Commander, the flagship is equipped with military-grade defensive systems," Amy reported, her voice tense. "Our standard weapons aren't penetrating their primary shields." Lisa had been expecting this moment. The hegemony wouldn't have advanced so far into human space without ships capable of withstanding serious defensive fire, but she had one more surprise waiting for them: the system that Jake Collins had installed in absolute secrecy during the final day of construction. "Jake, activate the primary defense grid," she ordered. The primary defense grid was the crown jewel of Delta 7's defensive systems. Hidden beneath the moon's surface, massive plasma cannons emerged from concealed positions. These weren't the standard automated turrets that had been holding off the alien fleet. These were capital ship weapons, powerful enough to destroy a battleship with a single salvo. The first shot from the primary defense grid struck the hegemony flagship dead center. The alien vessel's shields collapsed instantly, and secondary explosions began rippling along its hull. The massive ship staggered under the impact, its forward momentum carrying it directly into the kill zone where the automated systems waited. "Direct hit," Jake reported with grim satisfaction. "Enemy flagship is critically damaged and losing power." But the flagship's sacrifice had not been in vain. Its desperate charge had revealed the locations of Delta 7's most powerful weapons, and the remaining hegemony ships immediately began targeting those positions. Lisa realized that the battle was entering its final phase. Either the aliens would break and retreat, or they would destroy the outpost through sheer persistence. "All ships, concentrate fire on the primary defense grid," came the alien transmission that Amy intercepted. "Destroy those weapons at all costs." The hegemony fleet launched everything they had at the plasma cannon positions. Missiles, energy beams, and kinetic projectiles hammered the moon's surface as the aliens tried to eliminate the weapons that had crippled their flagship. But Jake's engineering proved its worth once again. The primary cannons were protected by the same shield generators that covered the main outpost, shields holding at 60%, Kevin Wright reported from his console. "But they're dropping fast under this kind of concentrated fire." Lisa made a quick calculation. The shields could probably absorb another few minutes of sustained bombardment, but not much more. She needed to end this battle quickly before the hegemony's superior numbers finally overwhelmed her defenses. "Amy, open a channel to the alien fleet," she ordered. "Channel open, Commander." Lisa looked directly into the communications pickup, knowing that her words would be transmitted to every surviving ship in the hegemony fleet. This is Commander Lisa Martinez of the United Earth Defense Force. You came here expecting to find a defenseless outpost. Instead, you found a fortress. Your flagship is destroyed, and you've lost 8 other vessels to our defenses. I'm offering you one chance to withdraw from this system with your remaining ships. The response came quickly, transmitted in heavily, accented English. Human Commander, you fight well, but you cannot hold against our full fleet. Surrender now, and your deaths will be quick. Lisa smiled coldly. I appreciate the offer, but I have a better idea. You're going to leave this system immediately, or I'm going to demonstrate why humans don't build defenseless outposts. She cut the transmission and turned to Jake. Activate the final surprise. The final surprise was something that even Lisa hadn't known about until 3 days ago. Deep in the computer archives, Amy had discovered plans for a weapon system that the original designers had included but never revealed to command. It was experimental, untested, and potentially devastating, exactly the kind of thing that desperate engineers might build into a frontier fortress. Orbital minefield deploying, Jake announced. Hidden throughout the system, disguised as asteroids and space debris, hundreds of automated mines began activating. They had been placed by remote drones during the frantic construction period, positioned to create a lethal maze around any fleet that tried to operate in the inner system. The hegemony ships suddenly found themselves surrounded by thousands of proximity-activated explosives. The effect on the alien fleet was immediate and catastrophic. Ships that had been maneuvering freely suddenly found their movements restricted by fields of deadly mines. 3 vessels that tried to retreat at high speed ran directly into mine clusters and were destroyed instantly. The remaining ships found themselves trapped, unable to advance or retreat without triggering massive explosions. "This is impossible," came another transmission from the alien fleet. "How could a small outpost deploy such extensive defenses?" Lisa opened the channel again. "You're learning what every enemy of humanity eventually discovers. We're very good at making the impossible happen when we need to. Last chance. Leave now or stay and find out what other impossible things we've prepared for you." The hegemony commander apparently decided that discretion was the better part of valor. The surviving alien ships began a careful withdrawal, navigating slowly through the minefield toward the edge of the system. They left behind the wreckage of 9 vessels and the clear understanding that Delta 7 was no longer a target they could handle. As the last alien ship disappeared into hyperspace, Lisa allowed herself to relax for the first time in days. The battle was over, and Delta 7 had not only survived, but achieved a decisive victory against overwhelming odds. Her small crew had accomplished something that would be remembered for generations. "Damage report," she ordered. "Minimal damage to defensive systems," Jake reported. "Shields took a beating but held. All primary weapons are operational. We're in better shape than we have any right to be." Amy looked up from her communications console with a smile. "Commander, I'm receiving transmissions from Fleet Command. Word of our victory is spreading fast. Every human installation in the sector is celebrating." Over the following weeks, Delta 7 became famous throughout human space. The story of how a forgotten outpost had been transformed into an impregnable fortress spread from world to world. Lisa Martinez, the officer that command had tried to quietly sideline, became a hero whose tactical innovations were studied at every military academy. Fleet Command, initially skeptical of Lisa's unauthorized modifications to the outpost, quickly changed their tune when they realized the implications of her success. If a single small installation could defeat a major hegemony fleet, then properly fortified outposts throughout the frontier could stop the alien advance entirely. "Commander Martinez," came the message from Admiral Stevens himself, "your actions at Delta 7 have not only saved the Kepler 442 system, but potentially changed the entire strategic situation on the rim. We're implementing the Delta 7 protocol at every frontier installation. You're being promoted to full commander and assigned to oversee the fortification of the entire sector." Jake Collins received a commendation and promotion to Chief Warrant. officer with orders to supervise similar fortress construction projects throughout human space. His engineering innovations became standard equipment for frontier defenses. Amy Turner was promoted to sergeant and assigned to train communications specialists in the new defensive protocols she had developed. Even Kevin Wright found recognition for his contributions. His drone designs and defensive innovations earned him a transfer to a special technical unit that specialized in automated defense systems. The young man, who had seemed destined for obscurity, became a valuable specialist whose unconventional thinking proved essential for frontier defense. But the most satisfying moment for Lisa came 6 months later when she stood in the command center of what was now officially designated Fort Martinez. The outpost had grown from 4 personnel to over 200, with construction crews constantly adding new defensive systems and capabilities. What had begun as a punishment posting had become the cornerstone of humanity's frontier defense strategy. Commander, long-range sensors are detecting alien probe ships at the edge of the system, Amy reported from her expanded communications center. Lisa watched as the alien vessels approached the system's perimeter, conducted their scans, and immediately retreated upon detecting the massive defensive installations. The hegemony had learned their lesson well. They no longer considered any human outpost to be an easy target. "Let them look," Lisa said with satisfaction. "They'll find that humans learn from every battle, and we never make the same mistake. Twice." The transformation was complete. The forgotten outpost that command had intended as a dead end for an inconvenient officer had become the model for humanity's defense against alien aggression. Delta 7 proved that human ingenuity, determination, and the refusal to accept defeat could turn any disadvantage into victory.